I've owned and lived in the same house for 8 years. It's a normal family-sized home which was relevant when I had roommates. But when they moved out and it was just me living here, I had nothing to do with the extra space. It was technically a 4-bedroom house, but I only used 2 of the bedrooms. One as my main bedroom and one as my game room. The other 2 rooms were at the far end of the upstairs hallway. One had a few storage boxes in, and the other was completely empty. After getting out of work at 9 p.m, I picked up Wendy's on the way home and pretty much went straight to the game room. I had the day off tomorrow, so what better to do than game all night? I put my headphones on and loaded up Call of Duty, but before I even had the time to load into a match, I thought I hear something that sounded like a knock at the front door. I took my headset off and listened, but not hearing anything and figuring they would have knocked again if there was someone there, I went back to my game. Probably a whole 2 hours went by, and then I heard it again. It sounded like either a knock or a door closing or something like that. But with my headphones on and with my room door closed, it was way too quiet for me to tell. I got up, opened the door, and locked it, and looked into the hallway, waiting for the sound to come again. After a minute, I went downstairs and looked at the front door. Nobody was outside my house, and everything seemed normal. Having heard this sound, though, I obviously made sure the door was closed before going back upstairs. To be a bit more cautious, I left my room door open this time. So if it happened again, maybe I'd hear it better. I put my headset back and continued gaming. I played through a whole round, so like 20 minutes. As the game ended, and I leaned back in my chair, a figure rushed past the open doorway, just off to the side of my view. I immediately threw my headphones off and jumped at my chair. Horrified and unsure what to do, I just stared at the doorway. I didn't get the courage to finally move for several minutes. When I looked into the hallway and eventually the rest of the house, nobody was there. But the front door was unlocked again. When the police came and investigated, on a rainy and stormy night, Sara returned to her old house. She had recently moved to the small town and didn't have many friends. The rain pounded against the windows, and the sound of the thunder echoed the air. Holding a steaming cup of tea, Sara sat on the couch, listening to the sound of the rain. After a few hours, while she was watching a horror movie, suddenly she heard a noise from upstairs. At first, she thought it might be a floorboard cracking under her weight, but the sound occurred again. But this time, it sounded like someone was walking. Sara's heart raced, but she tried to calm herself. She told herself that she was alone and that no one else was in the house. The sound of the footsteps continued clearly. Sara decided to go upstairs and check the source of the noise. She cautiously climbed the stairs. And each step echoed in the silence of the night. When she reached the top, she shone her flashlight around. Everything was silent and dark, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary. She went to her bedroom and opened the door. Suddenly, she heard a noise coming from the closet. With fear, Sara approached the closet and opened it. There was nothing inside, but she felt as taut as someone was watching her. Her heart raced faster, and she took a deep breath. She stepped out of the room and decided to go back downstairs. As she approached the stairs, she noticed that the light downstairs had gone out for a moment. As she approached the stairs, she noticed that the light downstairs had gone out. For a moment, she stood in the darkness, contemplating whether she should go down or not. The sound of the rain continued, but this time it was mixed with another sound, a scraping noise, as if someone were being dragged across the floor. Sara felt desperate and bravely headed back down. She reached the living room and turned on the light, but nothing seemed out of place. Once again, she sat down and tried to calm herself. Suddenly, she noticed that the doors of the house were inexplicably opening and closing. Now, Sara was terrified. She moved toward the front door and saw it slowly opening. In an instant, a dark, indistinct shadow passed through the door and headed towards the living room. Sara could no longer bear it. She bolted out of the house and ran into the streets. As the rain poured heavily and the sound of the thunder echoed in the sky, she approached her neighbors and asked for help. When the neighbors came to her house, everything seemed normal. They told her that it was probably just fatigue and stress causing her hallucinations. They told her that it was probably just fatigue and stress causing her hallucinations. But Sara could never forget the feeling of fear and horror from that night. She realized that perhaps there were things in that house that one could not understand. Every night she lost sleep, and every sound and shadow terrified her. Years later, Sara decided to leave the house, but each time she sat in a new place, the sound of the footsteps and the shadows followed her. She came to understand that fear is not just an emotion. It is a permanent shadow that never leaves her. Perhaps in the darkness, there are secrets hidden. It was a chilly autumn evening when Mark moved into his new apartment, a quiet yet eerie old building on the outskirts of town. The air was thick with the scent of damp wood and decay, but Mark was excited to finally have a place to call his own. As he unpacked the boxes, he felt an unsettling presence in the air, like someone was watching him. Shaking off the feeling, he settled in for the night, planning to start afresh in the morning. As the clock struck midnight, Mark was jolted awake by a soft whispering sound. He listened closely, but the voices faded into the eerie silence. Confused but intrigued, he decided to go investigate. He tiptoed through the dark hallway, his heart pounding in his chest. The dim light from his flashlight flickered as he moved, casting long shadows that danced along the walls. He reached the end of the hallway where a door stood slightly ajar. Mark pushed it open and found a dusty, unused room filled with old furniture covered in white sheets. The whispers returned, this time clearer and more insistent. "Help us, please." The chilling words sent a shiver down his spine. He hesitated, but curiosity got the better of him, and he stepped inside. As he moved further in the room, a large ornate mirror hanging on the wall Its surface was covered with a thick layer of dust, but as he approached, but as he approached, he could see faint images flickering within the glass, shadows of people, their faces twisted in agony. Mark felt a pull towards the mirror, as if it was beckoning him closer. Suddenly, the room grew cold, and he saw a figure materializing in the reflection. It was a woman with hollow eyes and a mournful expression. "You must help us," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "We are trapped in the mirror." Panic surged through the Mark as he stumbled backwards, realizing that the shadows were not just figments of his imaginations. He returned to leave, but the door slammed shut behind him. He was trapped. The whispers grew louder, swirling around him like a haunting melody. "Join us, join us." Mark's heart raced. Mark's heart raced as he frantically searched for an escape. He tried to push against the door, but it wouldn't budge. The woman in the mirror stared at him with desperation. Her hand reached out as if trying to break free from her prison. The other shadows surrounded her, their faces twisted in despair. In the moment of sheer terror, Mark remembered the old tales he had heard about mirrors acting as a portal to another realm. He realized that he had to confront the darkness within the mirror. Summoning his courage, he took a deep breath and approached the glass once more. He shouted, his voice echoing in the silence. "Set us free," the woman pleaded, her voice trembling. "You have the power to break the curse." Determined to help, Mark focused on the mirror, recalling the stories of those who had escaped from its grip. He gathered his strength and shouted, "I will not let you suffer any longer." As he pressed his hands against the surface of the glass rippled like water. A bright light erupted from within, and the shadows screamed in unison. The woman's face twisted in agony, but she smiled as the light enveloped. Mark felt a surge of energy course through him, and with one final push, he shattered the mirror. Shards of glass exploded into the room, and the whisper faded into the shards of the glass exploded into the room, and the whispers faded into the deafening silence. The door swung open, and the Mark stumbled out. He returned back to see the room now empty, devoid of the eerie presence that had haunted him. The following day, Mark packed his belongings and left the apartment for good. He had freed the trapped souls, but the experience lingered in his mind. He knew he would never forget the whispering shadows and the woman who had begged for help. As he stepped into the sunlight, he couldn't shake the feeling that the darkness would always be there waiting, lurking just beyond the edge of his reality.